Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're cracking the cash flow code. And my guest today is David Edey. David is the estate planner and wealth manager in Montreal. I met David through a mastermind program I was in. Fascinating guy. And I thought you needed to hear about him and talk about legacy and why you need to be taking care of your legacy stuff like wills and trusts and all that stuff when you own a business, especially if you own a business. So instead of me yammering on, let me bring David on. We'll start the conversation. Hey, David, how are you today?
Hey, Josh, how are you?
And David, I'm not hearing you at all.
No. It says here everything is connected.
I see your mouth is going, but no sound is coming through.
Whoa. And I'm saying great stuff.
There it is.
Can you hear me now?
I don't know why Siri decided to just pop up, but it did. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine. You can hear me now?
I hear you now. So
okay.
We can...
Because that first couple of seconds there, I said some gems, some amazing stuff. So maybe we'll catch it again.
Okay, we can go back and repeat it if you like to.
No, it's gone now. So let's start over.
Okay. So, David, I'll start off with a simple question. I'm a subcontractor in the construction business. I own a subcontracting business. Why do I need to worry about my estate plan?
Do you have a family?
I might, probably.
Well, suppose you didn't have a family. The reason why you'd be concerned about that is if something was to happen, what happens to them? What happens to your employees? What happens to the suppliers who've paid you in advance to get the work done? What happens to all that if something unexpectedly happens, like you die, you get a divorce, you become disabled? You need to have that succession plan. And even though my book is entitled Executor Help, it's for the individual who needs an estate plan. But as a business owner, you have to take it one step further, and you have to have a succession plan, because the two of them are two separate things. But to answer to your question, I like to give the story about Tony Hsieh. Do you know his story from Amazon?
I actually do, but I'm sure our listeners don't.
Well, back in 2010, Tony Hsieh was the CEO of Zappos.com. He set up his online retailer business in Las Vegas, and he revitalized the downtown. He was doing really well. 2010, Amazon came to him, scratched him a check for $1.2 billion. He put about 214 in his pocket, and then some of the other money, about 350 million. He revitalized downtown on Las Vegas. So anybody's gone to Las Vegas, you've seen over the years it's changed. Well, he stayed on with Zappos, working with Amazon till August of 2020. He resigned and was going to go off to do other things. August 2020, November 2020 comes. Just before his 47th birthday, he passes away. His estimated worth is about $850 million. I say about 850 because with all the wealth and all the smartness that he had, he died with no will, and he died with no succession plan. And what ended up happening is his brother and his father ended up being mandated by the court to become the executors. When they walked into his house, they estimate about 200 or 300 post-it notes of all the business deals he had going on. So right now it's just become a mess because he's got business dealings going on. He was involved with about 20 to 30 LLCs, and he had suppliers. So to answer all that question, he was not prepared with all the like any business owner. Well, like if you're a subcontractor, he was working on the business, but he didn't think about the unexpected that could happen. And now he's left a legacy and a mess.
So you just brought something up really interesting, which is that private business owners' lives are way more complicated than, say, if you're an employee of IBM or Intel or a major corporation. In that case, you still need to have a will. You still need to have a, power of attorney, all the other stuff that's important. But if you happen to not you probably can get through it. If you own a business, you're really putting your family at significant risk. And in fact, you brought up two things, David. One is you brought up legacy planning, otherwise known as estate planning. And the other thing you brought up, which is succession planning, which is a whole different kettle of fish. So can you talk a little bit about succession planning and what the difference is between that and estate planning?
Well, for succession planning, you as a business owner, I'll break it down this way. If something was to happen, there's only three things that are going to occur. You're either going to pass it on to a family owner. If something was to happen, a family member. You're either going to sell the business, and you're going to have maybe two other partners, or you've got a plan to just shut down the business. So you need to have something in place in terms of that succession plan. And over that time for that succession plan, you might be grooming other individuals to take over the business, or you've got an idea. You have some sort of plan for if something was to happen, for the business to continue on. An estate plan is going to make sure that all of your assets are going to be taken care of in terms of you have a will, you've got a power of attorney, you've got a PDA in terms of your health. So the two plans work together. As you said, yes, if you're working as an employee, you need an estate plan. But if you have a business, you need an estate plan and a succession plan because of all the responsibilities a business owner has in terms of not only to himself and the family, but also to his employees and also his suppliers.
So it's never, at least it's never been for me, a real secret when I talk to a business owner and I say, you need to have a succession plan. And he'll kind of shrug his shoulders and look at me and say, yeah, okay. And then they continue on down with whatever they happen to be doing. And they seem to never get around to doing a succession plan. They know about it. They know it needs to be done. They know it's important, yet they never do it. Do you have any ideas why that might be true?
It's common. Spoiler alert, we're all going to die. So let's get that on the table right now. So, and the reason why people don't do anything, and this is an uncomfortable conversation. I get it. It's not sexy in terms of talking about marketing plans and profit P&L statements. It's not sexy. I get it. But the reason why people don't have an estate plan, or even for the business owner, even think about a succession plan, is because they avoid the situation, they procrastinate, or they're apathetic, meaning they don't care if something was to happen, because some people take the thought that, well, if I'm dead, it'll be everybody else's problem. I'm not here anymore. But, if I'm going to go with the assumption that most people do care what's going to happen if something to their family and their employees and, the suppliers that the business people, suppliers that they've been working with, I assume that they do care what's going to happen. So it's those three areas. If we can get over that avoidance, procrastination, or apathy, then you have to make the decision, okay, I need to take some time and really think about it. Because like I said before, we're all going to die. It's not comfortable to talk about, but you also have to make sure that you leave not a legacy and a mess.
I actually have another theory for that. I think it's actually a lot simpler. I think that the reason that business owners never get around to doing succession planning, it just never rises high enough on the list. They're so busy doing this day-to-day stuff or running their business that, they think succession planning is going to take a ton of time and at least a little bit of money. And it's not the money so much that seems to be the issue. It's that they need to answer like 8 zillion questions about what they want to do as far as the succession plan goes. And they just don't want to think about it because they're too busy thinking about how to service Mrs. Jones' needs with whatever Mrs. Jones wants that particular day.
Right. Well, it may seem like it's a lot of work, and I know we're talking about death, but it's not only death. It could be, a divorce. Nobody sees that coming. They could be because of health situation. They could become disabled. They might get into a business disagreement with their partners. So it's not only death that we're talking about when it comes to succession planning. It's those other D's: divorce, disability, disagreement, or disillusionment where they're going to just shut the business down. They don't think it's going to happen, but you never know when that's going to. Think of it like a lottery. You don't know when your number is going to come up in any of those areas there. So again, it's not comfortable. It's not something that people like to talk about, but it has to be talked about. And in Canada and also in the U.S., it's more than 60% of Americans don't have an estate or will plan. So there's a huge gap in terms of what needs to be done. And because of the pandemic, people are now starting to have those end of life conversations for the first time. But even though they're having those conversations, it doesn't mean they're doing anything about it. And as a business owner, the business landscape has changed for everybody. The game's changed for everybody. So you need to be thinking, okay, you're trying to stay afloat of what's going on, in the marketplace due to the pandemic. But you also have to be thinking about what's going to be my exit, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Can I just stay afloat? So you still have to make some planning going on. So don't be just worried about the day to day. Think about the next 3 years, 5 years, or, how can I make this business viable that I can sell it right now? Again, you need a succession plan to think about those next steps.
Yeah, we actually encourage folks that we work with to do what we call scenario planning. In other words, I want them to list down the 10, 15, 20 things that could really cause a bad day for them. And then we say, what are the top 3 or the top 1 that you really need to worry about? Do that first. And then just keep going down that list as time goes on and do those scenario plans for what happens. And some of those would be, gee, if I get divorced, would that cause a really bad day for me? And the answer probably is yes.
Well, I could go
So
either
what do
way.
I need to be doing to protect the business from a divorce? Now, death may be further down the list because if you're 40 years old, you never think you're going to die. And the truth is, very few business owners actually do die. So yes, it's important to do. Well, it's true. Very few business. I've been in this business for 40 years. I've never had a client die.
Well,
While
there's
they were
something
running their
special about
business.
you, and there's something special about you, and we should talk offline because you seem to be, you've got the elixir there. Is it down in Vermont? Is that where it is? Is it something you guys are drinking? What is, so they
No,
don't
it's
die?
just, I think I'm relatively typical is that, yeah, obviously people die. No question about that. And some people die tragically. I went
Right.
through a really serious cancer event, so I could have died. I didn't die.
Right.
And the truth is, it's hard to get someone to focus on something unless there's a really good reason for them. Because at least in my experience, business owners are just too darn busy trying to do too many things at once.
But yes, they're too darn busy. But you know what? All it takes is for one incident to have that bad day. And if you're doing all of this and you're running the business, what are you doing it for? What are you solving for? What are we looking for at the end? You're getting up and you're running the business, and yes, it's tough right now because of the pandemic. But why are you doing what you're doing right now? There's got to be some sort of end game. Is your business going to shut down because you die? Is your business going to shut? Are you going to pass on that business, or are you going to retire? And if you're going to retire, then what are you going to do to fill those days when you're not at that business? So you're so busy, but you're busy doing what? You're working for what?
Retirement's a whole different ball game from death or disability or divorce.
Right.
So yeah, I get that, and business owners will get that. I've not been able to get a business owner to focus on retirement until they're 50. I just haven't been able to. I've tried.
No.
I've done lots of stuff. I have tools that actually show them that if they don't diversify, they're never leaving their business, not because of safety, but because their business won't give them enough money to retire on.
Correct.
That's been a truth for me. But the thing is that I have found that business owners just don't do a good job of long-range planning. That's the reason we bring scenario planning into play, because that will get their attention. If I can get someone to look at a scenario, that's a different ballgame from saying you should do this sort of planning. If they don't have a good why, they just aren't going to do it.
do you feel that the apprehension to do this, any sort of long range planning, is because their ego gets in the way, that they have this sort of Superman mentality that, well, that's not me, that's somebody else, I know what I'm doing?
That's a good question. I've really never considered that. I don't think so. I think it just is, they're so busy doing stuff that they just never get the time for it. I mean, this is really, one of the things I try to teach people is that I think that delegation is the most important skill a business owner can learn
Absolutely.
for a couple of reasons. One, it buys them time. When I first start working with somebody and they own a privately held business, and I go in, I say, you need to do an exit plan, which was, I've stopped using that term because I hate it. I use succession plan now. And they say, yeah. I know I need to do that. The truth is they don't have time to do it. And that's where their issue comes in. And the other issue is they're not thinking about leaving their business. I mean, it's really interesting. My second book is called The Sale Ready Company. And in that book, we're not talking about selling the company. We're just talking about getting the business to be ready for sale, which is what we all should do, even if we not want to sell. And what I've learned is that when I would talk to a business owner and say, we need to do an exit plan or a succession plan, only 5% of the time do they have any interest in it. 95% of the time, they want to make their business better.
Right.
Well, guess what? That's step 4 in creating a sale-ready company.
It's funny that you bring up the apprehension. And for my book, the section on succession planning wasn't even in the first draft of the book. And how it came about is I had done surveying for the book, and I knew I was going to be talking to the business community that we're a part of, and I put a question about succession planning, and I asked how many had a succession plan, and 80% didn't have one. And I said, well, there's something wrong here. So that's how that actually ended. That particular chapter ended up in the book, because it just seems like, and it seems that we're both saying the same thing, is that business owners are busy doing stuff and they're not thinking about what's next, what could happen, or what might happen. But do you think, and we'll come back again, is it the ego that gets in the way? Because the stuff that they're doing makes them feel like, well, I'm busy, I'm doing stuff, and I've got this call to make and this deal to make, and I've got this client to take care of, so I'm busy. I haven't got time for me, and I haven't got time for the business, the entity, for if something was to happen. So is it the ego, or is it they just can't handle having hard conversations?
I don't think it's either. I think it's just that their focus is making their business better, not making their business be taken over by somebody else. I mean, one of the things that happens a lot of times, I get into this conversation about delegation, and the ultimate purpose of being a good delegator is you make yourself operationally free from your business, operationally irrelevant in the day-to-day stuff. And a lot of times when I introduce this concept, I get one or two reactions. One, I want that. Two, which happens actually more, well, if I make myself operationally irrelevant, what am I going to do?
Okay, that sounds like ego again. What am I going to do?
There's some sort of ego in there, but it's really is, I spend all this time working in my business, and I really like working in my business. And if I make it so the business can grow and I start having to learn new skills, that's scary, because that's change.
Right.
And in my experience is they're more afraid of change than they are protecting their ego.
I kind of agree with you, but I still there's still some ego in it. Because I'll use the example of the popular TV show Succession. If you look, top level on what Succession's about, it's a business guy, an older guy who's got bad health issues, was going to leave, and then he wants to pass on the business, but he won't let go of the business because he's got this group, these children, which are they're a mess, and he can't, because of his ego, he can't leave the business. So we're watching all of that nonsense go on. But if you look at it, it's basically what we're talking about. He can't let go. The business has to keep going, and all that stuff but he can't let it go and can't pass it on to the next generation because he's got a bunch of knuckleheads, which is
That's definitely, well, that's a combination. You just gave a great example, David, of a combination of ego and capability. Because here we got a dad who has this ego bigger than all of life. And then we have children who are basically incompetent. And he's sitting there saying to himself, how can I leave this business to these folks who are going to ruin what I've created? And I'm the only buddy who can fix it.
exactly.
So you got both of those things going on at the same time.
And you can see why that fascinates people. Why is it such a great show that people are so excited about? But because you and I, and when I saw that, I'm going, this same sort of scenario we've seen before on television. If you think about it, you think about Dallas. What was Dallas about? You had the father, and then Jock passes away, and then it goes down to the son, JR. And then JR couldn't get along, even though the brothers and sisters, the brother and the half brother, they were all involved in the family business. They still couldn't get along. And everybody's captivated by how this family and the business, the succession went down, and they couldn't get along. It plays out over and over again. But if you take it to a smaller degree, you and I talk to business owners all the time, and it's the same scenario being played out.
Yeah, it often is, or it's, at least it's a version of that scenario that's
Right.
played out. It's rarely that dramatic, or if it is, I usually remove myself from the situation. But that's a different conversation.
And even here in Canada, we have the Rogers family. Same thing. The father passed away, the son, but the rest of the family's involved, and then they're just playing out their situation in court, and fighting over the business of which way the business should go. So this is the reason why, we're starting with our conversation. We've come full circle. This is why you need a succession. I
absolutely think you need a succession plan. No question about that. And the more that we can get people to do it, the better off society becomes as a whole. Hey, David, unfortunately, we are out of time.
Okay.
And for folks who are not watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, how would they get a hold of you, or how would they find your book if they want to get more information about you?
You could just go to my website, davidedy.com. It's DAVIDEDEY.com. And on my website, I've got information to help on succession planning. You can get my book. You can get a free chapter of my book. You can get the 50 questions an executive needs to know. You can listen to my podcast. So there's plenty of things that you can get there at the website.
Cool. And I've got two things I want you to do. I mean, the first you've heard like 9 zillion times, or 345 times anyhow. Please go wherever you're listening to this podcast and subscribe. And while you're subscribing, why don't you just leave us a review? If you love us, say you love us, give us 5 stars. If you hate us, well, I might be sad, but you can tell me you hate me, and I'll probably get over it, and I'll not even learn something. And the second thing I want you to do is, I mentioned my second book, The Sale Ready Company. I've got that for sale for half price on my site. And not only do you get the book, which is a business parable, I've also written a whole bunch of stuff that tells you how to do all the stuff that we talk about in the book, which you can get as bonuses with the book. So it's easy to get. You just go to www.salereadycompany.com. That's www.salereadycompany.com. And, put in your credit card for $7.95, and we'll have the book on the way to you. So this is Josh Patrick. We're with David Edey. We're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.